we're going to be looking at how, as an organisation, you can increase uptake of your active travel and bike to work schemes. We've got Jamie Milroy from Dash joining us. Hi, Jamie. Welcome.
Hi, Charlotte.
Hi. So before I do an intro to Jamie and what he's going to be talking about, we thought it would actually be really interesting and useful to preface Dash and Jamie with some of the data around active travel, and particularly what EVs or EV bikes, sorry, just from EV cars, an electric bike, or electric bikes can actually do to boost your cycle to work schemes, using some of the data that we actually use here at Mobility Way. So I'm just going to share a couple of slides from Commute IQ. So quickly, what is Commute IQ? So from a data perspective at Mobility Ways, when we're kind of looking at helping organisations to reduce their commuter emissions, we work on a measure, reduce and report cycle. So measure is really using a data-driven approach to make sort of decisions on sustainable transport and policy. And what Commute IQ is we take anonymous, well, sometimes anonymous postcode data, put it into our system, and where a travel survey is telling you what people are doing, Commute IQ tells you what people could be doing, so showing the art of the possible. And when it comes to cycle to work schemes, active transport, I'm going to show you the power of this data in a second. So next slide, please. So what you can see here, just to preface all of this, each dot represents a postcode, and we can layer on different modal options. So we can look across active travel, public transport, park and ride, and car share. And what we're looking at here is a viability. So you can, as an organisation, as a city, as a region, see where the gaps and the opportunities are based on infrastructure that exists now. So we go to the next slide. So what we are showing here is within the map, active travel based on walk and cycle, so your normal pedal power bikes. The inside ring with the green dots represents those employees or individuals who can potentially walk based on sort of average walking distances and speeds. And then your sort of greater ring out there is those who could cycle, sort of normal pedal cycle, based on sort of I think it's a 3 to 4 mile journey. What you get then in the background, as well as this visual representation, is a breakdown of percentages of employees who could feasibly, sustainably travel, sort of when we're looking at modal shift. So here you've got, I can't actually see it, it's very small. I think it's about 20% of employees here can active travel with a normal bike. If we go on to the next slide, we've added in a parameter of 12 miles, which we know sort of in our partnership with Dash that people are more likely to cycle longer distances if they have an electric bike. It makes sense, right? So when you actually add electric bikes into the mix, the percentage of sort of those who could actually actively travel goes huge. It's a massive change to, again, I can't, it's a bit small there.
I think I'm seeing 66%.
Thank you, Jamie. I knew it was around the 60s. So, you know, that's a sort of a tripling of the amount of colleagues that can sort of, that be able to potentially active travel. So that's kind of to put into context, I guess, why we really wanted to include a session on e-bikes today with Dash. Because, yeah, when we're talking about modal shift, if you can obviously turn the dial and create more opportunities for people to do a certain behaviour, you are obviously more likely to get that behaviour change and reduce your commuter emissions. So with that, I'm going to stop waffling and pass over to Jamie. So a quick intro to Jamie at Dash. Here we go. Jamie, excuse me, co-founded Dash after leaving consulting giant PwC in 2019. Since then, Dash has evolved to reinvent cycle to work for the 21st century, first offering flexible e-bike subscriptions before building the UK's first completely online cycle to work powered marketplace Dash store. So Jamie, I'm going to pass over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that intro, Charlotte, and thank you all for joining me today. We're pressed for time, so I am going to canter through my slides, so please do keep up. If there's any questions, put them in the chat function, and if there's time for Q&A, we'll do it. Otherwise, I will endeavour to get back to each and every one of you after the session today. So as that introduction said, I'm Jamie, one of the founders here at Dash. Whoever's controlling the slides, if we could start clicking through. Brilliant. Next slide. And yeah, for those of you who are new to Dash, we've got a very simple mission, which is to get more people cycling. And our focus for that is really everything around and including the sphere around work. So the first part of our business is encouraging more of your colleagues to cycle into work. And the second part of the business is encouraging organizations to utilize e-bikes within their operations and allowing them to do that in a really simple and efficient manner. Given the topic on offer today, though, I'm only going to talk about the first action. If you could click through, sorry, yeah. So talking about increasing cycle to work schemes, and as you can expect, this is a question I think about quite a bit. But I think the reason we're really looking at it today is because it's a good proxy for another question, which is how do we get more people cycling? So to try and answer this, I'm going to share the most common reasons that people are put off cycling and what we can do about them, what can cause low uptake of your cycle to work scheme, why e-bikes are probably the best tool we have to convert non-cyclists into cyclists, and then lastly, wrapping it off with what at Dash we're trying to do to solve all of the above. So given that I'm talking to a lot of sustainability professionals and people involved in travel, I think we can all agree that getting more cyclists is a good thing. They clearly contribute to CO2 mitigation, but also importantly, reducing air pollution, which I know is of particular importance to NHS trusts. But if we're going to really sort of raise the profile of cycling and make it a priority for organisations, we need to get more teams involved and make more teams look great for doing this activity than just ourselves. And the good news is we absolutely can, because as well as CO2 and air pollution, it also addresses all those other things that you can see along this slide. So just taking health and focusing on like HR colleagues and people, put it bluntly, there was a recent study that was released a few months ago of which spanned 18 years and over 80,000 participants. And the shocking results of that survey or study were that people who commute to work by bike are half as likely to die from any cause than their non-active commuting counterparts. So that is a huge reason for all of us to consider cycling to work. I think it's probably the most important reason we could ever give. So there it is. But it also boosts productivity. So I'm sure you've all heard of the cyclist's high. Well, as well as giving you increased concentration and creativity levels, cyclists also are estimated to take between 2.1 and, from memory, 4.5 less sick days per year. And when you work out what the financial implications are of that, that's about £500 saving per year per non-cyclist. So there is a real financial incentive to get people from being non-cyclists over to cyclists as well. On the well-being front, it helps with people's mental and financial well-being. You're 20% less risk of mental health issues if you cycle to work versus non-active commutes. And typically, when people switch to cycling from public transport or driving, they will save about £1,000 or more a year, which, if you think about it in terms of you getting a pay rise, is about equivalent to £1,500. So not to be shunned by any stretch. And then the last two, it's well understood that employee benefits contribute to delivering a really great experience for your employees, and that brilliant experiences mean that people are more likely to join your company or organization in the first place, and makes it harder for them to leave, or they're less willing to leave. So really important there. And then lastly, you can park 10 bikes in one car parking space. So that is a massive incentive to sort of reduce pressure on you building additional car parking facilities, or just boost the sort of parking availability for your customers, which I know many organisations can be a challenge, particularly again NHS trusts. So they're all the reasons why I think we can bring some other teams along. But in terms of what puts people off cycling, here are the top 7 that we encounter. I don't have time to talk through all of them, so I'm just going to talk through the ones in bold. For road safety and confidence, it's really simple things like encouraging people who are new to cycling not to take their first journey on a bike on a busy roads. Don't wait until they absolutely need to commute by bike to get to work for their first journey. Go off, have a short cycle ride, try and find some quieter roads. Just get used to being back on a bike or learning how to ride a bike if you haven't really done it since childhood. The other bit of advice I'd give is new cyclists often feel as though they have to sort of hug the pavement at every meter that they cycle. My advice would actually be move yourself out very so slightly into the more into the middle of the road. And the reason being is that if you do that, cars behind you have a harder time passing you, and therefore they're less likely to sort of take that sort of swing round you if they feel they can't make it. So they'll give you more breathing room, and you'll actually feel much more secure on the road rather than having cars constantly fly past you. So I know it sounds counterintuitive, but that is a definite one to follow. And then there's also tools like City Mapper and Mobility Ways' personal travel plans. These are fantastic tools for helping people map out their routes to and from work. Certainly with City Mapper, you can choose to go down quieter roads and things like that. It will sort of navigate you maybe a slightly longer journey, but you'll encounter less traffic as a result. So really fantastic tools, and I'd encourage you all to look at them. In terms of the effort in showering at work, I know this sounds daft, but many people just do not know how to shower at work. I know we're all adults, but sometimes we need to be treated like children. They don't know where the facilities are. They don't know what to bring to have a shower at work. They don't know about the rolled up shirt trick, which means you don't need to re-iron your shirt on arrival. A quick Google by any of you looking to encourage this, you'll find some really great tips, and it's just a case of sort of sharing that with colleagues. And I know it sounds silly, but you'd be amazed at how many people are put off, cycling to work just because they don't really know how to shower at work, and they're sort of worried that they'll get there, not have the right things, and then they'll have a day smelling slightly more than they otherwise might. But for those of you who really don't want to shower, there's always e-bikes to help you sort of arrive even less sweaty. So that's one option, which brings me nicely onto the cost. Now, e-bikes undoubtedly the way to get non-cyclists to become cyclists. The challenge with e-bikes is that they can be very, very expensive. You're typically looking at £2,000 to £3,000 for a sort of a good e-bike, and that's a big ask when you're not sure you want to cycle. So subscriptions, which allow people to sort of rent a bike for as little as a month, or an e-bike for as little as a month, these are a fantastic tool to get non-cyclists onto bikes and getting them to try an e-bike and experiencing it for their commute. You've obviously got traditional cycle to work schemes as and when people want to come and buy their bike or e-bike, and again that will lower the price. And then lastly, certainly our platform, we offer the ability for employers to subsidise the cost for staff. And if you think back to that £500 plus annual saving from getting a non-cyclist to become a cyclist, there are some very, very worthwhile financial reasons that you should be subsidising. And then there's all the other things on screen, which I won't go through. But yeah, if we could have the next slide, please. Typical barriers to cycle to work are here. So if you're restricting people to only sign up in 1 month of the year, that's a massive red flag, especially if it's in one of the winter months. So I'd encourage you to speak to your HR teams about changing that. If you set the scheme limit at anything really below £3,000, again, you're probably cutting off people that might want to cycle because of the sort of restrictions around e-bikes. If your scheme only allows you the ability to buy a bike, again, that's not allowing people to try them. So I would encourage you to look at other schemes where there's a bit more flexibility. And lastly, with cycle to work, it is a bit mystifying and confusing for many people. So really, you have to sort of do a lot of comms around educating people on what it does and making them aware of it, such that when they do want to consider buying a bike, they know it's there and they can go to it. Next slide, please. Power of e-bikes. The first 2 points are really, that is sort of demonstrated by Charlotte's Mobility Ways presentation around increasing that radius of people that can cycle into work. So that they're the reasons why you should be doing it. And then the last stat, 9% more calories, that sort of drops out of those first two. So e-bikes really do have some amazing powers in terms of getting people cycling and the sort of health and well-being benefits that flow from them. Next slide, please. So what are we at Dash trying to do about this? Well, we have built a significantly updated and upgraded version of Cycle to Work, which is Dash Store. Oh, the lights have just gone out. And really, it's there to sort of deliver increased choice, flexibility for you and your colleagues to demystify the process. And as you can see from the sort of people on the screen there, we work with some fantastic companies, and I'm very hopeful after hearing this that many of you will want to join that mission of ours to get more people cycling. So thank you very much. I think we're out of time, so just in time, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. Some really practical and actionable tips for organisations. So yeah, e-bikes are a great thing to look into. So recommend that anyone who's an employer on here get in touch with Dash to learn a little bit more. So thank you, Jamie.